My name is Victoria, I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how my own brother's betrayal lit a fire in me that changed everything. People think revenge has to be loud, messy, or violent, but mine was simple. I just let my success speak for itself, and I made sure he heard it loud and clear. If you like this story and want more like it, more real-feeling, suspenseful tales of people who waited, planned, and then made a clean strike, please subscribe to my channel, hit like, and share this with your friends. Your support helps me tell the truth, loudly and often. It started in our old family house, the place where we grew up, full of memories that should have meant comfort but instead carried the heaviness of responsibility and unspoken resentment. I had always been the one who held things together. The one who, despite being the youngest, was expected to patch holes when our parents struggled. The one who quietly carried burdens that weren't mine. My older brother, Daniel, was different. He believed being the oldest gave him authority but none of the responsibility. He liked to play the part of the man of the house, but when it came to stepping up, he always disappeared. I had just come off a tough month when this particular moment happened. I wasn't actually broke, but I wanted to see something real about my brother. I wanted to know if blood still meant anything to him, or if the years of excuses had hardened him into the selfish man I suspected he was becoming. One evening, sitting in the living room with its faded couch and peeling wallpaper, I turned to him and said softly, "Daniel, can I borrow $50? Does 50. I'll pay you back in a few days." He didn't even look up from his phone. He chuckled, a short, dismissive laugh, like I had just asked for something ridiculous. "Victoria, you're 29. You need to start handling your own messes. I'm not a bank." I swallowed, the sting sharp and immediate. "It's just 50. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." That finally made him look at me, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't brotherly concern. It was annoyance. "Listen, I barely have enough for myself. You're always going on about being independent, so be independent. Don't come running to me." The way he said it, the way his lips curved into that smug little smirk, it broke something inside me. Not because of the $50, but because in that moment I realized the truth. My brother didn't see me as family. He saw me as a nuisance. I nodded slowly, forcing a small smile. "You're right," I whispered. "Forget I asked." He shrugged, already back on his phone, as if the conversation meant nothing. But for me it meant everything. I went to bed that night with my heart pounding, not from sadness but from a strange, burning clarity. Had money. More than he knew. I had been working 2 jobs, saving every cent, investing carefully, building something quietly while everyone, including my brother, thought I was just barely scraping by. And now I realized it was time to let him underestimate me. It was time to let him think I was nothing. Because one day soon I was going to show him exactly who I had become. After that night in the living room, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to argue with Daniel. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of kindness he clearly had no intention of giving. Instead, I was going to keep my head down, let him believe his version of the story, that I was just the struggling younger sister, too dependent, too small to ever become anything. And while he looked down on me, I would quietly build an empire right under his nose. The truth was, I had been planning for years. Ever since my early 20s, I'd been saving. At first, it was just out of necessity, working long shifts at a cafe, tutoring kids on weekends, and later landing a modest office job. The paychecks weren't huge, but I learned how to stretch them, how to make my money work harder than I did. I devoured books about personal finance, studied investment videos at night when everyone else was asleep, and slowly, my savings turned into something bigger. By the time I asked my brother for that $50, I had already invested in a growing business venture with a friend, something that was finally paying off. I wasn't broke. Not even close. I just wanted to see where his loyalty stood. And he had shown me. So I doubled down. For the next year I lived like a shadow. Every morning I went to work with a smile, dressed modestly, never flaunting anything that would give away the truth. I drove the same old car that coughed and rattled at stoplights. I wore the same faded jeans and recycled outfits so many times that Daniel sometimes sneered and said, "Vic, don't you ever get tired of looking poor?" I would laugh softly and say, "It's not about looks, Daniel. Clothes don't pay the bills." He'd roll his eyes and go back to scrolling on his phone, muttering something about me being cheap. And every time he did, I tucked the moment away like fuel for the fire burning inside me. Meanwhile, my investments grew. My business partner and I flipped our first small property, a worn-down duplex we bought low, renovated ourselves, and sold for double. That single project gave me more profit than I had ever seen in my life. Instead of celebrating, I tucked the money away, careful not to flash it. Months later, I closed on my second property, this time larger. By then I had learned the ropes: permits, contractors, negotiation, and the success came easier. And with every deal my bank account grew. All the while, Daniel remained blissfully unaware. He still lived in the family house, still acted like he was above everyone else, and still laughed when I pretended to complain about not having enough for groceries. I let him believe it. In fact, I fed the narrative. Sometimes I would sigh dramatically and say, "I wish I had more money, Daniel. Things are so tight." And he would smirk, lean back in his chair and say things like, "That's life, Vic. Some people make it, some don't." I never argued. I never corrected him. I just nodded and kept my silence. Because I knew something he didn't. I was already sketching the blueprint for my new home. Not just any home. Mansion. I wanted it to be symbolic, something so grand, so undeniable, that the moment he saw it, he would realize everything he thought he knew about me was a lie. It wasn't about bragging. It wasn't even about the mansion itself. It was about the lesson. I wanted him to feel the weight of every time he'd dismissed me, every time he'd turned me down, every smug smirk he'd thrown in my direction. So while he sat in the family house, glued to his phone and laughing at my supposed broke lifestyle, I was meeting with architects, signing contracts, and walking through empty lots that would soon become the foundation of a $500,000 statement. The mansion wasn't just a house. It was my revenge. And I was building it brick by brick. When I first stood on the empty plot of land where my mansion would rise, the wind whipping through my hair, I felt something I can barely put into words. Freedom. Vindication. Power. The real estate agent had handed me the paperwork with a smile, congratulating me on securing the land. But all I could think about was Daniel's face when he'd eventually see what I had built. The design process was thrilling. It wasn't until the gates came into view, those towering black gates with gold trim, the kind you only see in magazines, that he finally looked up. "Wait," he said, squinting. "Where are we going? This isn't your neighborhood. You're gonna get us lost." I didn't answer. I slowed down as the gates swung open, revealing the sweeping driveway lined with manicured hedges and flowers in full bloom. And then, as we drove up the curved path, the mansion came into full view. Glittering windows, pale stone walls, balconies, and a front door so tall it could have been the entrance to a palace. Daniel's phone slipped from his hand. He stared, his jaw slack, his lips moving but no sound coming out. Finally he managed to croak, What is this place?" I parked the car smoothly, turned off the engine, and looked at him with the calmest smile I could muster. "This," I said, "is my house." He blinked. "Your what?" "My house," I repeated, stepping out of the car. I let the word linger in the air, heavy, undeniable. "I bought it. Actually, I built it." He scrambled out of the car, his eyes darting from the mansion to me as though trying to piece together a puzzle that made no sense. "You're joking. This can't be yours. You're broke." "You've always been broke." I chuckled softly, walking toward the front door. "That's what you thought, Daniel. That's what I let you think." He followed me, stammering, "But how? When? You don't even Victoria, this place is worth. This is worth $500,000, I said, turning to face him. 500,000. Paid in full. My name on every paper. My money in every brick. While you were busy laughing at me, I was building this." His face turned pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief, envy, and something else, fear. And for the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. Daniel stood frozen in the driveway as though his feet were glued to the ground. His eyes darted from the towering mansion back to me, searching for the punchline to a joke that wasn't coming. I turned the key in the front door, pushed it open, and stepped into the grand foyer. Sunlight spilled through the massive windows, bouncing off the polished marble floors. The crystal chandelier glittered overhead like a sky full of stars. "Are you coming in?" I asked, glancing over my shoulder. He swallowed hard and stepped inside, his shoes clicking awkwardly against the marble. His head tilted back as he took in the sweeping staircase that curved upward in a perfect arc. For a long moment, he just stood there, turning slowly, his mouth hanging open. "This," his voice cracked. "This is yours." "Yes," I said calmly, walking forward and running my hand along the banister. "Every inch of it." I led him through the first room, the living room with floor-to-ceiling windows, plush white sofas, and a fireplace carved from imported stone. He trailed behind me like a child, silent except for the occasional gasp. "Over here," I said, guiding him into the kitchen. The marble countertops gleamed under recessed lighting, the stainless steel appliances so polished you could see your reflection in them. Custom-built, imported finishes. I picked every detail myself. He shook his head, muttering, "No way, no way," as if repeating it might change the truth. We moved into the dining room next, where a long glass table sat beneath another chandelier, the kind of room meant for dinners that lasted hours. From there I showed him the library with its dark wooden shelves, already stacked with books, the home theater with reclining leather chairs, and finally the backyard, where the pool stretched like a sheet of blue glass, framed by manicured hedges and a private patio. Daniel stood by the pool, his reflection shimmering on the water's surface. His lips trembled as he finally whispered, "I don't get it, how? How did you even do this? You were broke. You came to me for $50, Vic 50. That was the moment I had been waiting for." I turned to him, my voice steady but sharp as glass. "Yes, I did. And you turned me down. Without hesitation. You looked at me and decided I wasn't worth even $50 of your help. That day, Daniel, I realized I didn't need you, or your approval, or your pity. I realized that if I wanted anything in this life, I'd have to get it myself. And I did." His face twisted, a storm of emotions fighting for dominance. Shame, anger, envy, disbelief. You tricked me. You let me think you were nothing while you were building this," I finished for him, gesturing around us. "Yes, I did. Because sometimes silence is the sweetest revenge. You thought I was broke. Let you. You thought I was weak. Let you. You thought you were above me. Let you. And now," I looked him dead in the eyes, "now I don't have to say a word. The house says it all." He opened his mouth, then closed it, struggling like a fish out of water. For once, Daniel, the man who always had something smug to say, had nothing. I let the silence stretch, savoring it. The only sound was the faint ripple of the pool water, shimmering under the sun. "Would you like to see the master suite?" I finally asked, my tone light, almost mocking. He didn't answer, but I didn't need him to. His face was answer enough. For the first hour after the tour, Daniel wandered the mansion like a ghost, touching banisters and staring at the carved details as if proximity might make it less real. I busied myself with small things, straightening a cushion, checking the placement of a vase, because it felt mean to stand and watch him flail. But inside, the calm I had carried for months hummed like a wire ready to sing. Finally he found his voice. It came out small, the way someone coughs in a stranger's house. "Vic, He stopped, swallowed, then forced a laugh that sounded like it had been borrowed from an old movie. "How did you do it? Seriously. I mean, this place. This is insane." "You saw it," I said. "You saw the work I did. You heard me when I said I built it." He paced, hands in his hair. "But this is, you lied to me. You let me think you were struggling." "Why?" Because you told me to be independent, I replied. You told me to handle my own messes. You refused to help me when I asked for $50. I decided to honor that advice. His face crumpled. He looked around like the house had swallowed his logic whole. Then the pivot came, jealousy melting into calculation. Look, Vic, he said faster now, every syllable an attempt to bargain. I screwed up. I know that. But your family. You have to help me. Just lend me something. Can fix my life. I'll pay you back. Give me a chance. The offer landed like a beggar holding out an empty cup. The audacity, after every sneer, every flippant remark, made something cold and clean click into place inside me. I could hand him a check. I could write a number that would stitch his life back together. I could buy his silence and call it mercy. But that would be the easy story. And I did not come this far to be easy. I let him stand there while I made coffee, poured 2 mugs and handed him one. He accepted it like a man who'd been given air. He took a sip and scalded his tongue, blinking like a child. See, he said weakly. I'm serious. You can't just. I can, I said softly. I can do whatever I want. That's the point. His eyes snapped to mine, desperate then pleading. Please, Vic. Sorry. Change. I'll get a job, whatever you want. Just help me. Don't let me lose everything. If desperation were currency, he would have been rich. But the economy of that moment was different. It was honesty versus entitlement, accountability versus entitlement disguised as humility. I took a breath and told him the truth he'd never heard before. You refused me $50 because you didn't respect me, I said. Not because you couldn't spare it. You chose to let me feel small. For months, I wondered if you were mean because you didn't know better or because you just didn't care. I watched you pick your version. He flinched like a struck animal. I didn't, he started. You did, I cut in. And now you want me to prop you up because the stage is wobbling. There was a long silence after that. I could see it chisel him down to bone. The memory of every time he'd scoffed at me, the grocery lists I'd paid, the nights I'd stayed up holding things together while he slept. All of it fit into the space between us like a ledger. Then he tried the last move. If you won't help me with money, at least give me a job here. Manage the grounds, do maintenance, whatever. Can work. I'll show you I'm responsible. There was something almost pathetic about his attempt to be useful, a humbled pride that wanted to grow back its wings. Part of me wanted the whole thing to be simple. Hire him, give him direction, watch him prove himself. But I remembered the slights, the times he'd chosen indifference when help was needed, the nights he'd laughed at my pennies. I remembered the power of lessons that were gentle versus those that burned. So I said 2 things and I said them deliberately. First, I will help you but not like you expect. He blinked. What do you mean? Second, you will earn it. His relief was immediate, stupid with hope. Okay. What do I have to do? I handed him a small envelope. Inside was a typed list, simple, exact, and in an order that mattered. Resume updated. 2 weeks, full-time, at the renovation site, unpaid, to learn the trade. Attend 3 financial literacy sessions a week. Volunteer once a month at the community center, where he'd once boasted about not having time. Meet with a career counselor. And if after 6 months his bank statements and references showed sustained effort, we'd talk about a modest loan, strict terms, a repayment plan, and collateral. No favors. No emotional bargaining. He scanned the list, mouth agape, as if I had recited a foreign language. Unpaid, he repeated. You want me to work for free. You asked me for money, I said. This is a chance to build something instead of begging for it. He sputtered protests, pride, hurt, confusion, but underneath it all there was a thread of something new, the faint recognition that the world didn't owe him a rescue. He had to create one. You'll do this on your own terms, I told him. No family pity. No quick fixes. You earn it or you don't. You want to be a man of the house. Prove you can be a man, not a taker. He looked stricken, humiliated, then oddly awake. "Fine," he said finally, voice small. "I'll do it." Watching him accept the list felt like administering medicine. It would sting. Might even cure. Or it might reveal that he preferred the old way. Easy excuses and borrowed dignity. Either way, the choice was his. I had wanted revenge that tasted like truth. I had wanted him to feel the sting of being turned away when he had laughed at me. I had wanted him to know that being shown up by your sibling is a kind of humiliation most people never get to experience. But more than that, I had wanted him to see that dignity must be earned, not handed as pity. As he left the mansion that afternoon, head down, the envelope clutched in his fist, I felt something shift. It wasn't the triumphant satisfaction I'd once imagined. It was quieter but deeper. The knowledge that I had given him a map, not a pardon. The rest, for better or worse, was up to him.